There are sounds the human ear is not meant to hear. Frequencies that vibrate the bone, the marrow, the parts of you that remember when we were prey. What you are about to hear is a true account from a former seismic analyst. The events have been verified through employment records, geological surveys, and sealed incident reports. His name has been changed, but what happened beneath the Vermilion Basin in 2014 is real. This is his story. Lights off, volume up. Let's begin. The drive to Vermilion Basin took 11 hours from Flagstaff. The last 90 miles were on unpaved roads that cut through scrubland so barren it looked like the surface of another planet. No trees, no animals, not even cacti, just rust-colored earth and heat shimmer that made the horizon waver like water. My GPS lost signal 40 miles out. I had to navigate using printed directions the company had sent me. Turn left at the dried creek bed. Follow the power lines. Watch for the marker at mile 67. The road deteriorated as I drove. Paved asphalt gave way to gravel. Gravel gave way to packed dirt. Packed dirt gave way to ruts and washboard that rattled my truck's suspension. I passed no other vehicles, saw no signs of human habitation. Just endless desert, endless sky, endless heat. The plant itself sat in a shallow depression surrounded by low mesas. From a distance, it looked like a cluster of white industrial cubes connected by elevated pipelines. 3 cooling towers rose from the center, venting steam into the cloudless sky. The hum was audible even from the parking area, a deep mechanical drone that you felt in your chest before you heard it with your ears. I arrived at 1400 hours on a Tuesday in May. The temperature was 104 degrees. The air was so dry, it felt like breathing through cotton. My lips cracked within minutes of stepping out of the truck. The site manager, a man named Garrett, met me at the security gate. He was in his late 50s, sunburned, with the kind of squint you get from decades in the desert. He wore a faded company polo and work boots that had seen better years. He shook my hand without smiling. His grip was firm, calloused. "You are Thorne?" he asked. "Elias Thorne. Yes. Good. We will get you oriented fast. The monitoring systems have been running on automatic since Holloway left. We need eyes on the seismic data." He led me through the main facility. The security gate required a key card and a 6-digit code. The door was heavy steel, reinforced, the kind you see on military installations. It closed behind us with a heavy thunk that echoed in the corridor. The interior was sterile, white walls, fluorescent lighting. Everything smelled like heated metal and sulfur. The air was dry enough to crack your lips within minutes. My boots echoed on the polished concrete floors. The sound bounced off the walls, came back distorted. We passed through a series of corridors, each one identical. White walls, numbered doors, no windows, no decorations, no signs of personality, just industrial efficiency. The hum was louder inside. It came from everywhere, from the walls, from the floor, from the ceiling, a constant vibration that made my fillings ache, made my vision blur slightly at the edges. "How many people work here?" I asked. "Depends on the week," Garrett said. "Right now, just me and you. Maintenance crew comes through on Thursdays. Sometimes a tech from corporate if something breaks. Otherwise, the plant runs itself. Just the 2 of us. It is all automated. Your job is to monitor the seismic sensors, flag anything unusual. The rest takes care of itself. The wells pump, the turbines spin, the electricity flows. We just make sure nothing breaks. And if something does break, we call corporate. They send a team. Usually takes 24 to 48 hours depending on the issue. We took an elevator to the 2nd floor. The elevator was old. The walls were scratched metal. The floor was stained with oil and rust. A handwritten sign taped to the wall read, "Maximum capacity, 2 persons. Do not exceed." The control room was at the end of another long corridor. Garrett swept his card and entered a code. The door hissed open. The control room was a long, narrow space dominated by 6 monitors displaying real-time data from the geothermal wells. Temperature gradients, pressure readings, seismic activity, flow rates, power output. The walls were lined with server racks, blinking lights, spinning hard drives. The air conditioning was running full blast, but it was still warm. The servers generated too much heat. My workstation was at the far end, beneath a window that overlooked the drilling field. I could see the cooling towers from here, the pipelines, the wellheads. Everything looked clean, organized, professional. Garrett showed me the basics: how to log into the system, how to flag anomalies, how to contact him if something required immediate attention. The interface was older than I expected. DOS-based, green text on black screens, but it was functional. Responsive. "You will be alone most of the time," he said. "Skeleton crew out here. Maintenance comes through twice a week. Otherwise it is just you and the machines." "Where about Holloway?" I asked. "Did he leave any notes? Handoff documentation?" Garrett hesitated, just for a second, but I noticed. His eyes flicked to the side. His jaw tightened. "He left in a hurry. Didn't file a final report. But his logs are in the system. You can review them if you want." "I will." He nodded. "Your quarters are in Building C. Cafeteria is automated. Vending machines, microwave, frozen meals, coffee maker. If you need anything, radio me. Otherwise, I will check in every 48 hours. He handed me a radio, a key card, a printed map of the facility, a key to my quarters. "One more thing," he said. "Stay out of Sector 4 unless there is an emergency. The lower levels are old infrastructure. Some of it is not stable. The concrete is cracked. The pipes leak. It is not safe." "Understood. Good luck, Thorne." And then he left. I stood alone in the control room. The monitors flickered. The servers hummed. Outside the window, the cooling towers vented endless columns of steam into the desert sky. I sat down at my workstation and logged in. The system prompted me for a username and password. I entered the credentials Garrett had given me. The screen changed. Green text scrolled across the black background. "Welcome, E. Thorne. Last login. Holloway. March 4th, 2014, 2:37 p.m. I stared at the screen. March 4th. 2 months ago. The first 3 days were uneventful. I reviewed Holloway's logs, which were meticulous up until his last week. He had documented everything. Temperature fluctuations, minor seismic events, pressure variations in the wells, maintenance schedules, equipment failures. His notes were precise, professional. The kind of logs you would expect from someone with years of experience. Then the entries became sparse, terse. On his final day, he had written only one line: Sector 4 pressure spike. Investigating. No follow-up. No explanation. No timestamp for when he returned. I flagged it and moved on. The work itself was straightforward. Monitor the seismic sensors. Watch for microquakes or shifts in the underground reservoirs. The Vermilion Basin sat on a geologically active zone, so minor tremors were expected. My job was to distinguish between normal activity and something that could threaten the integrity of the wells. The facility had 12 wells, each one drilled to a different depth. The shallowest was 3,000 feet. The deepest, well 12 in Sector 4, went down 14,500 feet. That was the one Holloway had been monitoring before he left. I pulled up the data for well 12. The temperature of depth was 680 degrees Fahrenheit. The pressure was holding steady at 4,200 psi. The seismic sensors showed normal background activity, micro tremors. Nothing unusual. I made a note in the log and continued my review. My quarters in Building C were Spartan. A single room, a bed, a desk, a small bathroom, a window that looked out at the desert. The walls were white. The floor was linoleum. The furniture was institutional, but it was clean, functional. I unpacked my things: clothes, laptop, books, a framed photo of my ex-wife. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I put it in the desk drawer. The cafeteria was automated. Vending machines lined one wall. A microwave sat on a counter. A coffee maker. A small refrigerator stocked with frozen meals. I heated up a lasagna, ate it alone, at a plastic table. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I went back to my quarters. Tried to read. Could not focus. The hum of the facility was constant, inescapable. It vibrated through the walls, through the floor, through the bed. I lay awake for hours, listening, waiting for sleep that did not come. On my fourth night, I noticed something odd. It was just after midnight. I was running a routine analysis on the deep sensors, the ones positioned at 12,000 feet, near the thermal reservoir. The data showed a rhythmic pattern, a low-frequency vibration, repeating every 23 seconds. It was too regular to be tectonic, too deep to be machinery. I ran a diagnostic. The sensors were functioning normally. I cross-referenced the pattern with geological databases. Nothing matched. I pulled up the waveform. It was clean, consistent, a perfect sine wave with a frequency of 0.043 Hz. I made a note in the log and decided to monitor it. The pattern continued for 3 hours. Then, at 317 hours, it stopped. The waveform flattened. The sensors returned to normal background noise. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. Then I went to bed, but I did not sleep well. I dreamed of voices, deep underground, speaking in languages I did not understand. The first week at Vermilion Basin was a study in isolation. I fell into a routine. Wake at 700 hours. Shower. Coffee from the automated machine in the cafeteria. Stale but functional. Walk to the control room. Log in. Review the overnight data. Monitor the sensors. Log any anomalies. Lunch at noon. More monitoring. Dinner at 1800 hours. Back to the control room until midnight. Sleep, repeat. The facility was eerily quiet during the day. The only sounds were the hum of machinery, the hiss of steam, the click of relays, my own footsteps echoing in empty corridors. I tried to establish contact with the outside world. My cell phone had no signal. The facility had internet, but it was restricted. Work email only. No social media, no streaming, no personal communication. I was cut off. On my third day, I explored the facility more thoroughly. I found the small library in Building B, a dozen books, technical manuals, geological surveys, a few paperback novels, all of them old, worn. I picked up one of the novels, a thriller from the 199 OS. The pages were yellowed, dog-eared. Inside the front cover, someone had written a name, M. Holloway. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put the book back. I found his quarters on my fourth day. Building C, room 7. Right next to mine. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was empty. The bed was made. The desk was clear. The closet was open. Empty hangers. But on the desk I found something. A coffee mug. Half full. The coffee had evaporated, leaving a dark ring at the bottom. I picked it up. Looked inside. At the bottom of the mug, someone had scratched words into the ceramic with a knife or a screwdriver. They are listening. I put the mug down, left the room, locked the door behind me. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the facility, thinking about that mug, those words. They are listening. Who was listening? What was listening? At 200 hours, I gave up on sleep. I got dressed, walked to the control room, logged in. The sensors showed normal activity, temperature, pressure, seismic background noise. But I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something was watching. I pulled up the security cameras, 6 cameras, covering the drilling field, the parking area, the main entrance, the corridors. Everything looked normal, but then I noticed something. Camera 4. The one covering the drilling field. There was a shape in the corner of the frame, near well 12. I zoomed in. It was steam, just steam, venting from a relief valve. But the way it moved, the way it held its form, it looked almost deliberate. I watched it for 10 minutes. It did not dissipate. It just hung there, in the air, like it was waiting. Then, at 217 hours, it moved. Not drifted, moved. It flowed across the drilling field, toward the camera, toward the building. I felt my heart rate spike. The shape reached the building, disappeared from view. I switched to camera 2, the corridor camera. Nothing. I switched to camera 3, the entrance camera. Nothing. I sat there, watching the monitors, waiting. At 223 hours, I heard something. Footsteps. In the corridor outside the control room. Slow, deliberate. Getting closer. I stood up, moved to the door, looked through the small window. The corridor was empty, but I could still hear them. The footsteps. Getting closer. I locked the door. The footsteps stopped. Right outside, I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Nothing. I unlocked the door, opened it slowly. The corridor was empty, but the floor was wet, a trail of water, leading from the elevator to the control room door, and then away, back to the elevator. I followed it. The trail ended at the elevator. The floor was dry beyond that point. I pressed the call button. The elevator opened. Inside, the floor was wet, puddles of water, and something else. Footprints, bare feet, leading into the elevator, and then disappearing. I did not get in. I went back to the control room, locked the door, sat at my desk, and waited for morning. The vibrations returned the next night. Same frequency, same interval. But this time, they were stronger. I'd spent the day reviewing technical documentation, familiarizing myself with the well architecture, the drilling logs, the geological surveys. Everything looked normal on paper. The Vermilion Basin was a textbook geothermal site. High heat flow, fractured bedrock, natural permeability, perfect for energy extraction. The geological survey had been conducted in 2009. A team from the University of Arizona had spent 3 months mapping the subsurface. Their report was 400 pages long, full of charts and graphs and seismic cross-sections. The conclusion was simple. The Vermilion Basin contained one of the largest geothermal reservoirs in the southwestern United States. Estimated capacity, 250 megawatts. Enough to power 200,000 homes. Construction on the facility had begun in 2010. The first wells were drilled in 2011. The plant went online in 2012. Everything had been running smoothly since then. No major incidents, no safety violations, no complaints from the workers. But something about well 12 bothered me. The drilling logs showed they had hit the target reservoir at 13,800 feet. Standard depth for a geothermal well. Then they had kept drilling. Another 700 feet. The notes did not explain why. Just a notation. Extended depth per corporate directive. I made a mental note to ask Garrett about it. At 2100 hours, I was back in the control room. The sun had set. The desert outside was black. The only light came from the floodlights around the drilling field and the glow of the monitors. The stars were brilliant. Thousands of them. More than I had ever seen. Out here there was no light pollution. No cities. No towns. Just darkness. That is when the vibrations started again. I pulled up the waveform on the main monitor. It looked almost deliberate. Like a pulse. Like a heartbeat. I adjusted the filters, isolating the signal from background noise. The frequency was the same. 0.043 Hz, but the amplitude was higher, stronger. The waveform was cleaner, more defined. I checked the other wells. Nothing. Wells 1 through 11 showed normal background activity. The vibration was coming exclusively from well 12. I ran a full diagnostic on the sensors. No errors, no malfunctions. The equipment was reading exactly what was happening 12,000 feet below the surface. That is when I remembered the audio output feature. The system had an audio conversion tool designed to translate seismic data into sound waves for analysis. It was an old technique. Geologists used it to identify patterns that were hard to see in waveform data. I had used it a few times in grad school, but never in the field. It was considered outdated. Most modern systems relied on visual analysis, but I was curious. I activated it now, feeding the deep sensor data through the speakers. The sound was low, a rhythmic thrum that resonated in the bones of the building. It was not loud, but it was present. You did not just hear it, you felt it. In your chest, in your teeth, in your skull. But beneath it there was something else. A faint, oscillating tone, almost like a voice. I turned up the volume. The tone shifted, rose and fell. It was not language, but it had cadence, structure, like someone humming, or chanting, or singing. I sat there for 20 minutes, listening. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding. The sound was hypnotic, mesmerizing. I found myself leaning closer to the speakers, straining to hear. The sound did not change, it just continued. That low thrum, that oscillating tone, over and over. A pattern that repeated every 23 seconds. At 247 hours it stopped. The waveform flattened. The speakers went silent. The sensors returned to normal. I sat in the dark control room, my heart pounding. My mouth was dry. My hands were cold despite the heat. I did not sleep that night. The next morning, I radioed Garrett. I am seeing some unusual seismic activity, I said. Deep source, non-tectonic. I think we should run a full diagnostic on the Sector 4 wells. There was a long pause. Static crackled on the line. I could hear wind in the background. He was outside somewhere. What kind of activity? He asked. Rhythmic vibrations. Low frequency. They don't match any known geological patterns. I have been cross-referencing with the USGS database. Nothing even close. Another pause. Holloway mentioned something similar, Garrett said finally. His voice was different. Quieter. More careful. My stomach tightened. What did he say? He said the wells were singing. I felt a chill run down my spine despite the heat. Singing? His words, not mine. Look, Thorne, the equipment is old. Sometimes the pipes resonate. It is harmonic vibration. Physics, nothing to worry about. We have had issues with it before. Usually fixes itself. This is not harmonic vibration. I have analyzed the waveform. It is coming from the reservoir, not the pipes, not the machinery. The source is 12,000 feet underground. Then what is it? I did not have an answer. Run your diagnostics, Garrett said. If you find a mechanical issue, log it. Otherwise, keep monitoring. I will be out there Friday. We can discuss it then. He disconnected. I spent the rest of the day reviewing Holloway's logs again. This time, I went back further. 6 months, 8 months, a year. The entries were normal at first. Routine observations, temperature readings, pressure checks, minor seismic events. Everything you would expect from a geothermal facility. But around month 7, the tone changed. He started noting auditory phenomena in the cooling pipes. Unexplained pressure fluctuations in Sector 4, temperature inversions that defied thermodynamic models. In one entry, dated October 12, 2013, he wrote, "Heard distinct tonal patterns in the steam vents today. Recorded audio for analysis. Pattern repeats every 23 seconds. Source unknown. Contacted maintenance. They found no mechanical issues. Pipes are functioning normally, but the sound continues. 23 seconds. The same interval I was seeing. I kept reading. October 19th, 2013. The sound is getting louder. Or maybe I am just noticing it more. It is hard to tell. I started wearing earplugs at night, but I can still hear it. Feel it. In the walls. In the floor. In my chest. November 3rd, 2013. The sound is not coming from the pipes. It is coming through them, like the pipes are acting as a conduit, a speaker. But there is no source, no mechanical explanation. I have run every diagnostic I can think of. Everything checks out, but the sound continues. November 17th, 2013. I recorded the sound and sent it to a colleague at Caltech, an acoustics specialist. He called me back 3 days later, said the frequency is too low for human hearing, but we can still perceive it, through bone conduction, through vibration. He said, it is called infrasound, used by elephants to communicate over long distances, used by whales, but this is not biological. This is something else. December 18th, 2013. Ran full diagnostic on well 12, all systems normal. But the sound continues. It is louder at night, between 2100 and 300 hours. Always the same frequency, always the same pattern. I have started keeping a log, documenting every occurrence. The pattern is consistent, predictable, like clockwork. January 9th, 2014. I think something is listening. I know how that sounds. I know how crazy it sounds, but I have been monitoring the pattern for weeks now, and I have noticed something. When I am in the control room, the sound is louder. When I leave, it gets quieter, like it knows I am there, like it is trying to communicate. I stopped reading. My hands were cold despite the heat in the control room. I scrolled to Holloway's final entries. January 23rd, 2014. I have been analyzing the waveform data, looking for patterns, and I found something. The oscillating tone is not random. It has structure, mathematical structure, Fibonacci sequences, prime numbers, ratios that appear in nature, in music, in architecture. This is not geological. This is intentional. February 6, 2014. I contacted a mathematician at MIT, sent him the data. He confirmed my analysis. The patterns are deliberate, designed. He asked me where I got the data. I told him it was from a seismic survey. He did not believe me, said the patterns are too complex, too sophisticated. He asked if this was some kind of joke. February 20th, 2014. The sound has changed. It is not just a tone anymore. There are variations, like it is trying to communicate. I have been recording everything, sending the data to a colleague at Stanford, waiting for analysis. I have not told Garrett. I do not think he would believe me. I am not sure I believe me. February 27th, 2014. Stanford says the patterns are not random. They show intentionality, structure, like language, but not human language. Something else, something older. They want more data. They want me to keep recording, but I am not sure I want to. I'm not sure I want to know what this is. March 4th, 2014. Sector 4 pressure spike. Investigating. That was the last entry. I sat back in my chair. Holloway had not left because of a family emergency. He had left because he was scared, or maybe he had not left at all. That night, the vibrations started earlier. 20 hours. And they were louder. I activated the audio output again. The low thrum filled the control room, but this time, the oscillating tone was clearer. It rose and fell in patterns, repeating sequences. I recorded it, played it back at half speed. It sounded like breathing, deep, slow, rhythmic, like something sleeping or waking up. I turned off the speakers. My heart was pounding. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the drilling field. The cooling towers vented steam into the night sky. The floodlights cast harsh shadows across the machinery. Everything looked normal, but I could still feel it. The vibration, in the floor, in the walls, in my chest. I pulled up the pressure readings for well 12. They were climbing. Slowly, steadily. The pressure had increased by 5% in the last hour. I checked the temperature. It was rising to 695 degrees, 710 degrees, 725 degrees. I made a note in the log, flagged it as a potential issue, set an alert to notify me if the pressure increased by another 10%. Then I sat down and waited. The vibrations continued all night. At 600 hours, they stopped. The pressure stabilized. The temperature dropped back to normal. I went to my quarters and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. That low thrum, that oscillating tone, like something breathing, deep underground, waiting. The next 2 days passed in a haze of routine and dread. I monitored the sensors, logged the data, watched the waveforms. The vibrations continued every night, always starting at 2100 hours, always ending at 600 hours, always the same pattern. I tried to sleep during the day, but the desert heat made it impossible. My quarters had no air conditioning, just a ceiling fan that pushed hot air in lazy circles. I lay on top of the sheets, sweating, listening to the hum of the facility. I started having dreams, strange dreams. I was deep underground, walking through tunnels that had not been carved by human hands. The walls were smooth, organic, like the inside of something living. And I could hear them, the voices, all around me, whispering, chanting. We remember. We are waiting. I would wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, the sun blazing through the window. On Wednesday, I decided to explore the facility. I needed to understand the layout, the infrastructure, where everything was, in case of an emergency. I started with the surface buildings, the control room, the cafeteria, the maintenance shop, the generator room. Everything was clean, organized, professional. Then I went to the drilling field. The wellheads were massive, steel structures, 20 feet tall, each one connected to a network of pipes and valves and pressure gauges. Steam vented from relief valves with a constant hiss. The smell of sulfur was overwhelming. I walked to well 12, the deepest well. The one hallway had been monitoring. It looked no different from the others. Same steel structure, same pipes, same gauges. But standing next to it, I could feel it. The vibration, even during the day, even when the sensor showed normal activity, I could feel it in my chest, in my bones. I put my hand on the steel casing. It was warm, warmer than it should have been. The metal vibrated under my palm, a steady, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. I pulled my hand away. That night, I tried to call my ex-wife. I do not know why. Maybe I needed to hear a familiar voice. Maybe I needed to feel connected to something. Someone. The call went to voicemail. Hey, it is me. I know we have not talked in a while. I wanted to hear your voice. I am out in the middle of nowhere, working a contract job. It is strange out here, isolated. I will call you again when I get back to civilization. Take care. I hung up. She never called back. On Thursday, the maintenance crew was supposed to arrive. I waited in the control room, watching the security monitor, waiting for their vehicle to appear on the access road. They never showed up. I radioed Garrett. No response. I checked the schedule. Maintenance was supposed to arrive every Thursday at 1,000 hours. It was now 1,400 hours. I was completely alone. That night, the vibrations were the loudest they had ever been. The monitor shook. The windows rattled. I could hear it without the audio output. A deep resonant hum that filled the entire facility. I pulled up the pressure readings. Well, 12 was climbing again. 4,400 psi, 4,500 psi, 4,600 psi. I set an alert. If it hit 5,000 psi, I would have to vent it manually. I sat in the control room, watching the numbers climb, listening to the hum. And then, at 23:47 hours, something changed. The waveform on the monitor shifted. The pattern broke. For the first time since I had arrived, The vibration was not rhythmic. It was erratic, chaotic, and then it stopped. Complete silence. I stared at the monitor. The waveform was flat. The sensors showed nothing. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, nothing. And then, at 23:52 hours, the pressure alarm went off. Sector 4, pressure critical. The numbers were climbing fast. 4,800 psi, 5,000 psi, 5,200 psi. I grabbed my gear. It was time to go down. On Friday, Garrett did not show up. I radioed him at 900 hours. No response. I tried again at noon. Nothing. At 1400 hours, I tried his cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. By 1500 hours, I was starting to worry. I checked the security logs. His vehicle had not passed through the gate since Tuesday, 4 days ago. I was alone. The facility felt different without him. Emptier. The hum of the machinery seemed louder. The corridor seemed longer. The shadows seemed darker. I found myself listening for footsteps that never came, voices that were not there. I tried to focus on work. I ran diagnostics, reviewed data, made notes in the log, but my mind kept drifting back to Holloway's entries, to that final line. Sector 4 pressure spike, investigating. What had he found down there? Had he ever come back up? I checked the employee records. Holloway. M. Last day of employment, March 4th, 2014. Reason for termination, voluntary resignation. No forwarding address, no emergency contact, no next of kin listed. It was like he had been erased. That night, the vibrations were constant. No pauses, no breaks, just a steady pulsing rhythm that made the windows rattle, made the monitors flicker, made my vision blur. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the data, but the sound kept creeping in, that oscillating tone, rising and falling, louder than before. At 22:30 hours, the main monitor flashed a warning. Sector 4 pressure critical. I pulled up the well data. The pressure in well 12 had spiked by 40% in the last hour. The temperature readings were climbing. 710 degrees, 730 degrees, 750 degrees, 780 degrees. If it continued, the containment seals would fail. The well could blow out. Superheated steam and rock fragments would erupt from the drilling field. The entire facility could be compromised, destroyed. I had two options. Shut down the well remotely, which would take hours and risk a catastrophic pressure release, or go down to Sector 4 and manually vent the pressure through the emergency relief valves. I radioed Garrett again. No response. I was on my own. I grabbed a flashlight, a radio, a printed schematic of the lower levels, a hard hat, safety goggles, heat-resistant gloves. I took the service elevator to Sector 4. The elevator was old. The walls were scratched metal. The floor was stained with oil and rust. A handwritten sign taped to the wall read, "Maximum capacity 2 persons. Do not exceed." I pressed the button for level 4. The elevator descended, and descended, and descended. The digital display counted down. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. The vibration grew stronger. I could feel it in the walls of the elevator, in the floor, in my bones, in my teeth. It was not just sound anymore. It was physical, tangible. Level 4. The doors opened. The air was hot, thick. It smelled like sulfur and wet stone and something else, something organic, like decay, like rot. The lighting was dim, bare bulbs hanging from the ceiling. Half of them were burned out. The ones that were still working flickered, cast moving shadows on the walls. I stepped into a narrow corridor lined with pipes. Steam hissed from joints and valves. The walls were bare concrete, stained with mineral deposits, green and orange and rust red. The floor was slick with condensation. My boots squeaked on the wet concrete. The vibration was stronger here. I could feel it in my teeth, in my skull, in my chest. It was not just sound, it was pressure. Like being underwater, like being crushed. I followed the corridor to the main valve room. The door was ajar. Light spilled out into the corridor, flickering, unstable. I pushed it open. Inside, I found Holloway's logbook. It was sitting on a metal desk, open to the last page. The handwriting was shaky, frantic. The ink was smudged like he had been sweating when he wrote it, or crying. It is not a reservoir. It is a chamber. Something is inside. Something old. The drilling woke it up. The sound is not random. It is a response. It knows we are here. It knows we are listening. And now it is listening back. Below that, in larger letters, do not go deeper. And below that, in tiny cramped letters at the very bottom of the page, it is not alone. There are more, hundreds, thousands, all of them waiting, all of them listening. We drilled into something we were never meant to find. I stared at the words. My hands were shaking. I heard a sound behind me. I turned. The corridor was empty, but the vibration had changed. It was no longer rhythmic. It was erratic, pulsing, like a heartbeat, like something excited or angry. I looked at the pressure gauge on the wall. It was redlining. 5,200 psi. The needle was trembling. The glass was cracked. I had to vent the system. Now, I moved to the manual valve. It was a large wheel, rusted from disuse. I gripped it with both hands and turned. The wheel resisted. Then slowly, it began to move. Metal groaned. Steam hissed. The pressure gauge dropped. 5,100 psi. 5,000 psi. 4,900 psi. And then I heard it. A sound, deep, resonant, coming from the pipes. Not a hum, not a vibration, a voice. It was not words, but it had intent. I could feel it. A presence, vast, ancient, aware. The lights flickered. I let go of the valve and stepped back. The voice grew louder. The pipes began to shake. The floor trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. I looked down at the logbook. Holloway had written one more line, in the margin, in handwriting so small, I had almost missed it. They are not trying to communicate. They are trying to get out. The lights went out. I stood in the dark. My flashlight was in my hand, but I could not move, could not breathe. The darkness was absolute, complete. The voice was everywhere. In the walls, in the floor, in the air itself, in my head. And then I felt it, a presence, behind me. I turned. The corridor was still empty, but the darkness was wrong. It was too thick, too solid, like it had weight, like it had substance. I turned on my flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, illuminated the corridor, the pipes, the walls, and something else, a shape, tall, thin, standing at the far end of the corridor, maybe 50 feet away. It was not solid. It was made of steam, of heat shimmer, but it had form, limbs, a head, shoulders. It was watching me. I could feel it, even though it had no eyes, no face. I could feel its attention, its awareness. It took a step toward me. The floor shook. I ran back to the elevator. Slammed the button. The doors did not open. I hit the button again. Again. The shape was getting closer, moving through the corridor, not walking, flowing, like water, like smoke. The elevator doors opened. I stumbled inside, hit the button for the ground floor. The doors closed. Just as the shape reached them, I saw it through the closing gap. Tall, thin, made of steam and shadow, and then the doors sealed shut. The elevator climbed. I could still hear it. The voice. It was following me, rising through the pipes, through the walls, through the elevator shaft. When the doors opened on the ground floor, I stumbled out. The control room was dark. The monitors were dead. The emergency lights were on. Red, strobing. I grabbed my radio. Garrett, anyone? This is Thorne. We have a situation. Sector 4 is compromised. I need immediate evac. Repeat. I need immediate evacuation. Static. I tried again. Nothing. The building shuddered. A deep rolling vibration that felt like an earthquake, but the seismic monitors, the ones still running on backup power, showed nothing. No tectonic activity, no ground movement. This was not geological. This was something else. I moved to the window. Outside, the cooling towers were venting massive plumes of steam. The floodlights were flickering, and in the drilling field, I saw movement. Shapes, tall, thin, standing between the machinery. They were not solid. They were made of steam, of heat shimmer, but they had form, limbs, heads, shoulders. There were dozens of them. They were watching me, all of them, watching, waiting. I backed away from the window. The voice was everywhere now. In the walls, in the floor, in the air itself. It was not speaking. It was resonating. A frequency that bypassed the ears and went straight to the brain, straight to the nervous system. I felt it in my thoughts, in my memories. It was searching, probing, trying to understand what I was, what we were. The monitors flickered back to life, but the data was wrong. The seismic readings showed impossible patterns, waveforms that spiraled, that looped back on themselves, that defied physics. And then, on the main screen, a message appeared. Not typed, not generated by the system, just there. In green text on a black background, "We are awake." I stood frozen. The shapes outside were moving now, converging on the central building, on me. I had to get out. I had to run. Now, I ran for the exit. The facility was in chaos. Alarms blaring. Red emergency lights strobing, steam venting from ruptured pipes. The shapes were closer now, moving through the machinery, converging on the central building. I reached the main corridor. The door to the parking area was at the far end, 200 feet, maybe less. I ran. Behind me, I heard the sound of metal tearing, glass shattering. The building was coming apart. The walls were cracking. The ceiling was buckling. The voice was louder now, not just in my head, in the air. A deep, resonant frequency that made my vision blur, made my ears ring, made blood drip from my nose. I reached the door, slammed my keycard against the reader. Nothing. The lights stayed red. I tried again. Still red. The power was out. The electronic locks were dead. I looked back down the corridor. The shapes were inside now, moving through the walls, through the floor. They were not walking. They were flowing, like water, like smoke, like shadows given form. I grabbed the manual release, pulled the lever. The door hissed open. I stumbled outside. The night air hit me like a wall, hot, dry. The smell of sulfur was overwhelming. Choking, I coughed, gasped for air. The parking area was 50 yards away. My truck was still there. I could see it in the flickering floodlights. I ran. The ground shook, a deep, rolling tremor that knocked me off balance. I fell, caught myself on my hands, kept running. Behind me, the Vermilion Basin geothermal plant shuddered. The cooling towers collapsed inward with a sound like thunder. A geyser of superheated steam erupted from the drilling field, shooting 200 feet into the air. The floodlights exploded. Glass rained down, and beneath it all I could still hear the voice. Not angry, not hostile, just aware. Curious, hungry. I reached my truck, fumbled with the keys, dropped them, picked them up with shaking hands. The engine started on the third try. I floored it. The unpaved road was barely visible in the dark. I drove by instinct, by memory. The headlights cut through the dust and steam. The facility disappeared behind me, but I could still see it in the rearview mirror. The glow of the fires, the column of steam rising into the night sky, and the shapes, dozens of them, standing in the drilling field. watching me leave, not following, just watching. I drove for 6 hours straight, did not stop until I reached Flagstaff. My hands were locked on the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. My shirt was soaked with sweat. I went straight to the police. The station was quiet. A single officer at the front desk. He looked up when I walked in, took one look at me and stood up. "Sir, are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" I must have looked like hell, covered in dust. Blood dried under my nose, eyes wild. "I need to report an incident," I said. "At the Vermilion Basin geothermal plant, there has been a catastrophic failure. The facility is compromised. People could be in danger." He grabbed a notepad, started writing. "What kind of failure?" "Pressure spike. Well blowout. The facility is not safe. You need to send someone. Now. Is anyone injured?" "I don't know. I was the only one there." "The site manager, Garrett. He never showed up. I tried to radio him. No response." The officer made a call, spoke quietly into the phone. Hung up. "We will send a unit to check it out. Can you give me your name and contact information?" I gave him everything. My name, my phone number, my address in Flagstaff, the name of the company, the location of the facility. He took notes, asked questions. I answered as best I could. I did not tell him about the vibrations, the voice, the shapes. I told him it was a pressure failure, a geological anomaly, equipment malfunction. He looked at me like I was in shock, which I probably was. "Do you need medical attention?" he asked again. "No, I just need to go home. We may need to follow up with you for the report." "I understand." I left. I went to a motel, checked in, locked the door, sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I did not sleep. 2 days later, a team from the Department of Energy arrived. They interviewed me for 8 hours. In a conference room at a government building, 3 men in suits, recording everything. They asked about the facility, the wells, the pressure spike, what I had seen, what I had heard. I told them everything. The vibrations, the voice, the shapes, Holloway's logbook. They listened, took notes, did not interrupt. When I was done, they looked at each other, then back at me. "Mr. Thorne," one of them said, "what you experienced was a catastrophic pressure failure caused by a geological anomaly. The facility has been shut down. The wells have been sealed. There is no ongoing danger. What about the shapes, the voice, hallucinations caused by exposure to infrasound? Low-frequency vibrations can cause visual and auditory hallucinations, feelings of dread, paranoia. It is well documented. And Holloway? We have no record of anyone named Holloway working at Vermilion Basin. I have his logbook. I took it from Sector 4. We will need that for the investigation." I gave it to them. They told me the facility had experienced a catastrophic pressure failure, a geological anomaly. They were shutting it down permanently. They told me not to speak to the press. They told me I would be compensated for my silence. They slid a document across the table, a non-disclosure agreement, with a number at the bottom, 6 figures. I signed it. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Holloway, no return address. Just a single page, handwritten. "You heard it too. I know you did. It is still there, waiting. They think they can seal it. They are wrong. It has been down there for thousands of years, millions. We just gave it away to reach the surface. I am sorry. I did not warn you. I did not think anyone would believe me. I still do not think they will. But you need to know, it is not gone. It is just listening and waiting for the next time someone drills deep enough." I burned the letter, but I kept the recordings. I had listened to them over and over, trying to understand. The frequency is always the same, 0.043 hertz. The pattern is always the same, 23 seconds. But there is something else. Something I did not notice at first. If you play the recording backward, the oscillating tone changes. It becomes words, not English, not any language I recognize, but words. I sent the recording to a linguist at MIT, a specialist in ancient languages, dead languages. She called me 3 days later. Her voice was shaking. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "I can't tell you. This is Proto-Indo-European, or something close to it. A root language, older than Sanskrit, older than anything we have on record, older than written language." "What does it say?" She was quiet for a long time. "It says, 'We remember.'" "Remember what?" "I don't know, but there is more. If you play it forward again, at normal speed, and isolate the harmonic frequencies, there is another message, embedded in the waveform." "What does it say?" Another long pause. "It says, 'We are waiting.'" I hung up. I have not listened to the recording since. The days after the incident blurred together. I stayed in a motel in Flagstaff, barely left the room, ordered food delivery, watched the news, waited for something, anything. There was nothing. No reports of an incident at Vermilion Basin, no emergency response, no investigation, nothing. It was like it had never happened. On the third day I drove back out there. I do not know why. Maybe I needed to see it with my own eyes. Maybe I needed proof that it was real. The drive took 8 hours. I followed the same route, the same unpaved roads, the same markers. When I reached the site, I stopped the truck a mile away. The facility was gone, not destroyed, not collapsed, gone. The buildings had been demolished. The cooling towers had been removed. The pipelines had been dismantled. The wellheads had been cut off at ground level and capped with concrete. The entire site had been erased. I got out of the truck and walked closer. The ground was scarred. Tire tracks everywhere. Heavy equipment, bulldozers, cranes. They had worked fast, very fast. I walked to where well 12 had been. There was nothing left but a concrete pad, smooth, featureless, like a gravestone. I put my hand on it. It was warm. I could feel it. The vibration, faint, distant, but still there, deep underground. I got back in my truck and left. I never went back. The Department of Energy interviews continued for weeks. Different people, different questions, always the same answers. They wanted to know everything. What I had seen, what I had heard, what I had felt. They showed me diagrams, asked me to point out where I had been, what route I had taken, how long I had been in Sector 4. They asked about Holloway, over and over. What did he look like? What did his handwriting look like? Was I sure the logbook was his? I told them I had never met him. I had only seen his logs, his handwriting, his notes. They told me there was no record of him. They told me the logbook was a fabrication. They told me I was suffering from acute stress disorder. Hallucinations brought on by isolation and exposure to infrasound. They offered me treatment, therapy, medication. I refused. They offered me money. I accepted. The non-disclosure agreement was 40 pages long. I read every word. It prohibited me from discussing the incident with anyone. Media, family, friends, colleagues, online forums, social media, anyone. Violation would result in immediate legal action, seizure of assets, criminal prosecution. I signed it. The money appeared in my account. 3 days later, $250,000. I used it to disappear. I moved to New Mexico, changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, cut ties with everyone I knew. I got the job at the solar farm. Quiet work, simple work, safe work. But I could not escape it. The dreams continued. Every night, I was back in Sector 4, walking through those corridors, hearing that voice, seeing those shapes. And every morning, I woke up with the same feeling, that I was being watched, that something was aware of me, tracking me, waiting. I started researching, obsessively, late at night, when I could not sleep. I found more incidents, more than I had initially discovered. In 2007, a geothermal project in Indonesia, drilling to 17,000 feet. The crew reported hearing voices, seeing apparitions. The project was shut down after 3 workers disappeared. Their bodies were never found. In 2010, a project in New Zealand, drilling to 14,000 feet. The facility experienced a catastrophic blowout. 12 people died. The official report blamed equipment failure, but there were witness statements, sealed statements, from survivors who reported seeing shapes in the steam, hearing voices in the pipes. In 2012, a project in Kenya, drilling to 16,500 feet. The entire crew evacuated after reporting mass hallucinations. The project was abandoned. The well was sealed. In 2015, a project in Turkey, drilling to 15,000 feet. The facility was destroyed in an explosion. 23 people died. The official report blamed a gas pocket, but there were rumors, whispers, of something else. I plotted them all on a map. Dozens of incidents, scattered across the world, all of them in geologically active zones, all of them drilling deeper than 12,000 feet, and all of them reporting the same thing. Voices, shapes, vibrations, something down there, something ancient, something aware. I started contacting people, anonymously, through encrypted email, burner phones. I reached out to workers who had been at these sites, geologists, engineers, technicians. Most of them would not talk to me, but a few did. They told me the same story, over and over. The vibrations, the sounds, the feeling of being watched, the shapes in the steam, and they all said the same thing. It is still down there. It is waiting. We should never have drilled that deep. One of them, a geologist who had worked on the Iceland project, sent me a file, a seismic recording. From the deep sensors, I played it. It was the same frequency, the same pattern, the same oscillating tone, 0.043 hertz, 23 seconds, the same voice. I sent it to the linguist at MIT, the one who had analyzed my recordings. She called me back immediately. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "Iceland, 1313. It is the same, exactly the same language, the same message. What does it mean?" I have been working on the translation with colleagues, specialists in Proto-Indo-European, Sumerian, Sanskrit. We think we have it. "Tell me." She hesitated. "It says, we were here first, and we'll be here last. We remember the surface, we remember the sky, we remember when you were nothing, and we will remember when you are nothing again." I hung up. I have not contacted her since. I have not contacted anyone since. I live alone now, in a small house outside Santa Fe. No neighbors, no visitors, just me in the desert. And every night, I hear it, that voice, that vibration, reminding me that they are still down there, waiting. I never went back to the Vermilion Basin. The site was decommissioned in late 2014. Officially, it was due to structural instability. The wells were sealed with concrete. The buildings were demolished. The land was fenced off. Warning signs were posted. Danger, no trespassing, unstable ground. But I have followed the story, quietly, from a distance. The official report blamed the incident on a pressure cascade failure, a chain reaction caused by thermal expansion in the deep reservoir. The report was 300 pages long, full of technical jargon, geological models, engineering analyses, diagrams and charts, and computer simulations. It never mentioned the vibrations. It never mentioned the voice. It never mentioned hallway. It never mentioned me. I tried to find him. After I got the letter, I searched public records, social media, employment databases, alumni directories, professional associations. Nothing. It was like he had never existed. I contacted the company, asked about him. It told me there was no record of anyone named Holloway ever working in Vermilion Basin. They said I must be mistaken, confused, suffering from post-traumatic stress. I showed them the logbook, the one I had taken from Sector 4. They told me it was a fabrication, that I was mistaken, that the handwriting did not match any employee records. They offered me more money, a lot more money, to sign an expanded non-disclosure agreement, to undergo psychological evaluation, to agree to treatment. I signed it. I took the money, but I kept the recordings. I've tried to move on. I took a job at a solar farm in New Mexico. Clean energy, no drilling, no deep wells, nothing that goes more than 20 feet underground, just panels and inverters, and batteries, surface level, safe, but I still hear it. Late at night, when everything is quiet, a low hum, a vibration in the walls, in the floor, in my bones. I went to a doctor, told him about the tinnitus, the constant ringing in my ears, the vibrations I felt in my chest. He ran tests, hearing exams, MRI scans, CT scans, blood work. Everything came back normal. It's probably stress, he said. Occupational hazard. You worked in a loud environment. Your brain is compensating for the silence. It is called phantom sound, like phantom limb pain. The brain creates sensations that are not really there. I did not tell him what I really heard. I did not tell him, but the ringing has a pattern. 23 seconds. I did not tell him that sometimes, late at night, I hear words in a language I do not understand, but I know what they mean. We remember. We are waiting. I have done research. Late at night, when I cannot sleep, I have read everything I can find about geothermal energy. Deep drilling, geological anomalies, induced seismicity. I found something interesting. In 2009, a geothermal project in Switzerland was shut down after it triggered a series of earthquakes. The drilling had reached a depth of 16,000 feet, deeper than Vermilion Basin. The earthquakes damaged hundreds of buildings, injured dozens of people. The project was terminated. The company was sued. The official report blamed it on induced seismicity, pressure changes in the bedrock. But there were reports, unofficial reports, from workers at the site. They heard sounds, deep underground, sounds that did not match any known geological process, sounds that seemed intentional. The project was abandoned. The well was sealed. In 2011, a similar incident occurred in California, a geothermal plant near the Salton Sea, drilling to 15,000 feet. The facility experienced unexplained pressure spikes, equipment failures, power outages. Workers reported auditory hallucinations, visual disturbances, feelings of dread. The plant was shut down. The wells were sealed. In 2013, another incident in Iceland, a deep well project, 18,000 feet. The drilling crew reported hearing voices in the steam vents, seeing shapes in the shadows. The project was terminated. The well was sealed. There are others, dozens of them, scattered across the world, all of them involving deep drilling, all of them shut down under mysterious circumstances. I started mapping them, plotting the locations, the depths, the dates. There is a pattern. All of them are located in geologically active zones, fault lines, volcanic regions, places where the Earth's crust is thin, where the heat from the mantle is close to the surface. All of them drilled deeper than 12,000 feet. All of them reported similar phenomena: vibrations, sounds, voices, shapes. I think we are drilling into something old, something that has been down there for a very long time. I think we are waking it up. I do not know what it is. I do not know if it is alive in any sense we understand. I do not know if it is biological or geological or something else entirely, but I know it is aware, and I know it is listening. I have tried to warn people. I have sent anonymous reports to geological societies, Energy companies, government agencies, environmental organizations. No one listens, or maybe they do listen, and they do not care, because the energy is too valuable, the technology is too important, the profits are too high. We keep drilling, deeper and deeper, and whatever is down there keeps waking up. I think about Holloway sometimes. I wonder where he is, if he is still alive, if he hears it too, if he knows more than he told me. I think about the shapes I saw on the drilling field, the figures made of steam and heat shimmer. Were they real, or were they hallucinations, infrasound-induced visions? I do not know, but I know what I felt. That presence, that awareness, that intelligence, it was real. I think about the message on the screen. We are awake. And I wonder, what happens when they are fully awake? What happens when they decide to come up? What happens when we drill too deep in the wrong place? I think we are going to find out, sooner than we think. I never went back to the Vermilion Basin. The site is gone now, erased, like it never existed. The land has been returned to the desert. The fences have been removed. The warning signs have been taken down. If you drive out there now, you will find nothing. Just empty desert, rust-colored earth, heat shimmer. But if you listen carefully, if you press your ear to the ground, you might hear it. That low hum, that vibration, that voice, still there, still waiting. To this day I sometimes wake up hearing that oscillating tone, that voice, speaking in a language older than human civilization, saying the same thing over and over. We remember, we are waiting. And sometimes in my dreams, I see them, the shapes, tall, thin, made of steam and shadow, standing in the desert, watching, waiting for the next person to drill deep enough. If you enjoyed this account, please leave a like and subscribe to Alkantaraz for more verified horror. Stay safe, and remember, you are never truly alone. Some things were never meant to be disturbed, and some things never forget, and some things are still down there, waiting for us to dig deep enough to let them out.